All right, this is a Sicha from the Rebbe. We're continuing on the Sicha that we learned yesterday. We began yesterday. It's a Sicha that the Rebbe said in Tafshin Nun Beit, 1992, in Parshas VaYaitzai. And this was from Tet Kislev. Tet Kislev is the birthday and the date of the passing away, 54 years later, of the second Rebbe of Chabad, as we talked about yesterday. And the Rebbe now is trying to explain to us why it's so significant that the second Rebbe of Chabad, passed away on the same day, the date that he was born on. And said we can also find this by other tzaddikim in the Torah. For instance, Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zion Adar, and he passed away exactly 120 years later, and on the same date, Zion Adar. And the same thing it says by the other. There's one opinion that says that that also Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were born in Nisan, and they passed away in Nisan, in the month of Nisan. There's an opinion like that. So what is so important about this? So he says that one of the things that's important is that the purpose of the tzaddikim, the righteous Jews, is, like we discussed in the mimer in the morning, we finished just learning, to make an effect in this physical world and to bring a certain completion, wholesomeness, blessing, purity into this physical world. And one way of expressing this is that their days are complete. Like it says that God says he sits and he fills the years of the tzaddikim from day to day. So every single day seems to be important. Okay, what is the importance of this? For instance, the second Rebbe of Chabad, he filled his days. Actually, it wasn't by any of the other Rebbes of Chabad. There were a lot of holy Jews that they also were born on a different date and they passed away. What does it specially show by the second Rebbe of Chabad that he was born on the same date that he passed away? Just like Moses. Okay, Abir Bazeh, the explanation will be like this. The Hektim, we first of all have to make a preface. The Sheikhus in Parshat HaShavua. What is the connection to this week's Torah portion, VaYaitzai? We know, and it's stressed a lot of times in Chabad especially, that the portion, the Torah reading of the week, contains a special message for that particular week in its every detail. So let's see what this detail of Parshas VaYaitzai has to do with the birth and the passing away of the second Rebbe of Chabad. This, by the way, the second Rebbe of Chabad, he lived like right in the beginning of the, what do they call it, the 19th century? No, 18th? Yeah, 19th century, in the 1800s, right in the beginning of the 1800s. So he passed away in like 1820 something. So let's understand what's the connection to this and Parshas VaYaitzai and Vayishlach. Vayishlach we begin on Shabbat and Mincha. Okay, this story about Yaakov really, right, a Sipur B'Torah on the service of Yaakov Avinu, this is not what Yaakov did. In other words, his work in the world, it doesn't really occur in the first place where Yaakov appears, in Parshas Toldot, last week. Sheba Medubar Eich Yaakov, there it talked about how Yaakov was in the house of his father in Eretz Yisrael, but Beersheba. At the beginning of Yaakov's life, he was in Beersheba, and that's where he got the blessings from his father. He stole them from his brother. Very interesting story, but that's not the main story about Yaakov. The main thing of Yaakov, where he gave birth to all of his children, etc., that's in this week's Parsha, Parshas VaYaitzai. Parshas VaYaitzai, it starts off, what does VaYaitzai mean? He went out. The whole Torah portion of VaYaitzai is that Yaakov left the Holy Land. VaYaitzai Yaakov mi Beersheba, and he went to Haran. The Yaakov left Beersheba, he went to Haran. Haran, it says, is called Haran Afshel Makom. Haran is the place that angered God, the burning anger of God in the world. Haran was a place where everybody in Haran did the opposite of what God wanted, and they succeeded, and they kept doing it. This is talking about Lavan Arami. Lavan was, of course, the brother of Rivka, and he was a total, how do you say, a con man. In Hebrew, they call it a nochel. He was a cheater, a liar, a deceiving person. With all the things that were leading, and he was a big leader over there. The Yerida Hachi Gadola. He went down to the lowest of places. Therefore, Pachad Yaakov. Therefore, Yaakov was actually afraid. In Nizkach, he had to have the promise of God. What does it say? That Yaakov was very, very afraid. And God said, don't worry, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to protect you, and you're going to come back here. Even more, Haran, Yaakov married, and he established his family. Reuben, Chulam, Shvatim, the majority of the tribes. This is the foundation of the Jewish people. That's no place to raise children in Haran. It's a Lavan b'Haran, and even after Yaakov finished his service of Lavan in Haran, and he wanted to come back home. I want to come back home. And afterwards he was commanded by God, Shuv el eretz avotecha, and God commanded him, go back. Instead of Yaakov immediately going back to Israel, then Matchil Sipur next week, the story about Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov wants to go back home, settle down, have a holy family, and raise holy children and grandchildren. He suffered so much in the hands of Lavan, right? He was there for 20 years. He cheated him, he tricked him. Didn't go to sleep at night. It was cold, right? Try staying awake outside one night. You'll see it'll be a trauma for the rest of your life. You go outside in a cold place and you don't sleep the whole night. One night you'll remember it. Terrible, awful feeling. Yaakov did it for 20 years. He tricked him and he lied to him. He had to watch the sheep. So after Yaakov finished this whole thing, he said, okay, now I'm going to go back home. Then all of a sudden comes the whole story with Esav. His brother wants to kill him. Vayishlach Yaakov, Malachim. Yaakov had to send angels or messengers in front of him to Esav, his brother, to land of Seir, and with all the details that are in Parshas Vayishlach. Only after Parshas Vayishlach, the Torah comes back and says that Yaakov came back me'eretz Megorei Aviv. That's the portion afterwards. So all of this week's Torah portion and all of next week's Torah portion speaks about Yaakov outside of Israel, dealing with the most dangerous and it's a dishonest people that there are. Shari Lichior, at first glance, Ikar Sipar, the main thing of story of Yaakov, Betor Echad Mia Avot, and one of the forefathers of Judaism, that they are all vehicles for godliness. Adarabah, Bechor Shemal Bechir, he was the chosen one of the forefathers. It says that from Abraham came out, he had one bad son, Ishmael. And from Yitzchak, he had a bad son, Esav. But Yaakov, this is mitata shlema, that all of his children were all holy tzaddikim. He was the best of all of them. He was the father, really, of the Jewish people, Yisrael. If so, he should have gotten a little bit of, VIP treatment. Hayatzorich liot al avodato b'kodesh b'eretz Yisrael. He should have gotten a little bit of. God should have done a few more miracles for him, at least make things a little bit easier. And for sure, he shouldn't have had to deal with these terrible people. Rak b'kitzer im b'chlal an inyan de asaka of im Lavan, what he did with Lavan and Esav of Russia. Lavan is called Lavan ha'arami. He was called Lavan, like these people in the mafia. They give him all these nicknames. Lavan, he had a nickname, the cheater. Esav had a nickname, the how do you say, the evil one. What type of a name is that? Esav of Russia. And these were the people that Yaakov had to deal with. Kafish is Torah, Orot Avodat Avram, like it says by Avram and Yitzchak, that the Avram and Yitzchak, their main thing was in Eretz Yisrael. Why did Yaakov, that he's the chosen of the fathers, he had such a terrible, awful, difficult life? Even afterwards, when Yaakov goes down to Egypt, he says, Pharaoh says, how old are you? He says, the years of my life, ma'at v'ra'im. He said, they were terrible. The years of my life were awful, he said. Ma'at v'ra'im. Very few years, and they were awful. Alpia Yadua, what is known, Shemaisa Avosim and Labanim, that the deeds of the forefathers, they are a sign and a giving of a power to us. So why is it that Yaakov spent almost all of his work that he did, and the holy work that he did, among the worst people possible, the worst conditions? We can understand that this story, because Yaakov is one of our fathers, and this is a sign to us, this whole story with Yaakov and Lavan and Esav, this must be a sign and a teaching for us in the service, our service of God, because that's why we're here, to serve Hashem. Through the story of Yaakov, VaYaitzai Yaakov, VaYishlach Yaakov, that this is Hapam Arishon, this is the first time in the Torah, Shebo Medubar, that it's talked about in such great length on the service of the Avos in this world. Right? Very short, it talks about Yitzchak digging the wells, but here it's really talking about details. The Torah is telling us the Torah means teaching. Horal Adors, this is a teaching for all generations. Shetachlit avodan shel Yehudi, that the main purpose of a Jew is lif'ol b'olam, to work in the world. And the Torah also teaches Seder, how you should do it. V'yetziv Yaakov b'Beersheva, that Yaakov went out from Beersheva and he went to Haran. This teaches us in general the soul coming into the body. The soul of a Jew, neshama shenatata b'tahorah, the soul of a Jew has a bigger test than even Yaakov did. How long was Yaakov in the house of Lavan? 20 years. And then afterwards, Esav, how long did he was suffering with Esav over the other thing? Who knows how long? Not long. A person's soul comes from this purity, which is infinitely more pure than Beersheba, than where Yaakov was. Pure feeling of truth and health and joy, and it comes into the world for 70, 80, 90, 100 years. Right? The world, the whole world. All that time, it's in Haran, worse than Haran. The soul goes from Beersheba. Beersheba explains in Kabbalah, this is the aspect of Bina, awareness, understanding of God. This is what's called Be'er. This is the source of Sheva, of the 7 attributes of Atzilut. That's where the soul comes from, Jewish soul. V'hi yoredet, and the soul comes down to Malchut, to the physical world. Charona. Ad, until she Yerida shel Malchut la'olamot bia, until it comes down into this physical world, the soul. Ata barata, ata yatzarta, ata nafachta bi. The soul was so beautiful, so pure. It comes down into this terrible world. Ad la'olam hazeh, into this physical world, a gashmi v'chumi, that's physical and even worse than physical. It's gross, material. Charon av shel olam. This world is makom. I'm sorry. This world is the burning anger. It causes the burning anger of Hashem. Shumalik klippas v'sitra. This world is full of klippa and sitra achra. It's full of shells and evil and opposition to God. Hamalimim and mastirim alokus, that it conceals godliness. And it hides over the holiness of the soul itself. But and even more, it can even make a Jew damage his Judaism. Like, that's what Yaakov was afraid of. Right? The soul gets into the world. God sends it into the world. Okay, here you go. Go into the world and conquer the world. Okay, says the soul, I'm going to go into the world. What's the world like? Is it anything like up here in heaven? When I'm up here in heaven? God says, listen, it's something like it. You'll see. It's hard to explain it. Right? It's hard to explain. I mean, here up in heaven, there's pure truth, there's pure godliness, they feel the soul, you're just so happy just to be in existence. I'm a miracle. I'm a miracle. I feel I'm a miracle. The soul is so happy and wonderful. And God says, okay, now go down into the world. What is the world like? It's also miracles. Oh, wow, yeah, I really want to go down there, right? I really want to go there. He goes into the world. What are you talking? What type of miracles are you? He forgets that he was in heaven. He forgets that he's a Jew. He forgets that he's a human being, right? How would you like some money? Oh, money, of course. Who doesn't want money? That's the purpose of life, is to make money, to have power. That's it. He forgets totally about everything, right? And in order to make money, he's willing to cheat. He's willing to lie. Who knows what he's willing to do? And somebody takes away his money from him. Ooh, he goes crazy. He wants to jump out of a building. He's so angry, he gets angry, and he's jealous, and he's depressed, and he's frustrated, and he's confused because his money is gone. What are you talking about? What are you going crazy? For what? What do you mean when you got this money? Money for power, for honor, for all these things? Totally far away from God. Infinitely far away from God. When a person dies, he takes his money, doesn't take nothing. And what does he take? All of a sudden, he realizes, I forgot I came for a purpose. I forgot. A soul in the body. By means of this, being in the body in this terrible place, why does God do it? The same reason why he sent Yaakov into this terrible place. Megaleh, to reveal, by means of doing Torah and the commandments, et or neshama, the true light which is in his soul, the light of defiance. Va'al yedei zeh, by means of this, hu mapach et hachumiyut, he can transform the physicality, the materiality of the world to physicality. The world is physical, and by then he can cause the physicalness of the world to be batal v'tafel, to be holiness, to be surrendered and secondary to the Creator. And then it becomes even more, it becomes a vessel to reveal the Creator, his soul, until that even his body and his soul becomes, oh, this he couldn't do. In heaven, he had nothing to defy. There was nothing to transform. There was no challenges. There was no difficulties. There was no, impossible situations that you had to deal with and dig into your soul and find, I can do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try, I'm going to do it with God's help. In heaven, you didn't need God's help. Everything was God. You didn't need any help. There was no challenges, no difficulties. like a baby in an incubator. You received everything. Kafisha zeh maruma is like it's hinted at. B'techilat Yetziat. You read it, Yaakov, in the beginning of the going out of Yaakov, when he went out, VaYaitzai Yaakov mi Beersheva. What did it say? Vayelech Charona, that he went to Charona. What does it mean he went? He walked, he went, he moved. Davka yedei Charona, Davka yedei Charona. Davka by means of being in this terrible place. Charon, you read it in Hashem Alamata, this soul coming down below. And only by means of this you become Vayelech, you become a mover. Beneshama Atzmo, in the soul itself. Like it says, I made you walking among these ones that are standing. And even more. It says, Vayelech Charona. It says not that he went to Charon, he went in the direction of Charon. What does it mean, the direction? That he kept going there. Even after he reached there, he kept going lower and lower. Kivan Shabot Lamata, since that the service of below, this causes one to be a mover, causes you to be dynamic. Gamba Mitziut Shel Charona, even in Charon itself. In other words, not only are you not affected by the negative things in the world, but you affect the world. You influence the world for good. Therefore, Lo Nemar doesn't say that he went to Charon, that then the intention would be that Yaakov went to Charon. He went to this place. But Alicha Charon, it remains two different things. He went to Charon. Yaakov was there and he wasn't affected by the place. That's a very great accomplishment, that you're not affected negatively by the world. It's very nice, amazing. But Yaakov didn't suffice with that. Ela vayelech Charona. He went in the direction of Charon. This hints at spiritually drawing down nimshechet el mitziuto ubetoch mitziuto shel Charon atzmo. Went Charona. What does it mean? That he transformed this whole idea that there could be such a place as Charon. He transformed that Charona, that he uprooted the whole entire thing from the very beginning, from the very base of Charon. This didn't go to this place called Charon. Charona, that the whole basis of Charon, the essence of Charon, in other words, the whole essence of the negativity of the world, he can transform to godliness. The Yesh Lo Sif, and we can add on. And how do you do this, by the way? First of all, it has to be by having a clear goal and a strong connection with the Creator. And then afterwards, when you get into the world and you realize the world is much more real and threatening and dangerous than you thought it was, then you have to pull new powers, you have to make a new connection with the Creator. And by means of having this new connection with the Creator, a new connection with Hashem's Torah and commandments, and knowing that Hashem wants you to have an effect on the world around you, then that's what has the effect on the world. The world does not affect you. Yesh lahosi, if we can add on, shedavar zeh. The reason I'm saying this is because there were people who made a very big mistake with this idea. There were people that made a very big mistake with this idea, and it's a very easy mistake to make. And that is that you think that by going down low into the world, is that itself is raising up the world. By going down into the world, I'm a Jew, I'm even a religious Jew, and I'm putting myself in a low situation, a place that's low, is just people will see me, and that'll be enough. The problem is that a person that goes down this, if he becomes pulled down a little bit, if he, what do they call it? If he compromises his values even a little bit, then he missed the whole point, right? True, he shows everybody it's a religious Jew. So everybody sees, here's a religious Jew. He can do stupid things just like I do. So it's not such a big deal to be. He hasn't got really what to offer so much. He's a religious Jew because that's what he wants to be. Good. There's all sorts of different people in the world. You know, there's people from France, from England, from this. We accept them all. We accept the religious people also. The main thing, though, is they should act like us. So going down into the world, right, can be a very, very tricky thing. That's what we have to do. But a person has to have a very, very strong connection to his mission statement, why he's doing it, and not to be caught into the world. There's a lot of people, I don't want to say their names, but there's a lot of people that really made, really big mistakes, and they became successful also. They were very successful. And they couldn't figure out why the Lubavitcher Rebbe just didn't really approve of what they were doing or join in what they were doing, whatever. Because this is what we have to do, but on the other hand, it has to be done with a very, very clear goal, and a person always has to be checking himself. That's why you always have to have a rabbi and a friend and a partner and an advisor to see, am I doing the right thing? Any case, but that is the goal. That is the goal. Don't say, listen, it's too dangerous. I'm just going to stay in my city, in my town, with my family, and that's it. Right? I'm not going to do anything. That's also a mistake. That's also a mistake. In a way, it's a bigger mistake. In a way. Because it's almost like an auto mechanic saying he doesn't want to get his hands dirty. Or a doctor saying he doesn't want to do operations because sometimes people die. And so there's not going to be any auto mechanics and there's not going to be any doctors. That's the job. The job is that we have to fix up how do we know that's the job? That's what Yaakov did. If we can add on, that this is hinted at also in the extra hey, when it says charona, namely that our job is not just to be not affected by the world, but to affect the world, to make the world a holy place. That can be hinted at that Yaakov went charona with a hey. Like the rabbis say, the world was created with the letter hey. In other words, by means of Yaakov going from Beersheba to Haran, that he revealed in Haran this letter hey of God's name. Shabon Nivra Olam Hazeh, that through it the world was created. Hainu hakoach, the power and the godly life which enlivens the creation will be revealed in the creation. That's the letter hey, like koach hapol benifal, the power of the Creator in the creation. Makirim umakirim benifal, that you can discern, that the world can discern and recognize in the creation, the physical world, that there is a creator, Chayot Eloki, a godly creator. And this godly creator, he wants you to be his partner, and he wants to be your partner. In other words, the world is a wonderful, godly, miraculous place, but we have to work in it. And when we do, God will help us. In other words, don't cheat, don't lie, don't hurt other people, be honest, don't be lazy, etc. So that we see that the whole creation, the nifal, the result of the creator, is just an expression of the creator. It's an expression of the power of God. Like we said before in the Mimer, we learned the letters of God. So that's the object of Yaakov, is Yaakov to come into Haran and to transform this Haran to be what it really is, a creation of God. And to make the people in Haran realize this, and then it won't be such a terrible, disgusting place anymore, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. And now let us do a little bit of Hayom Yom. Where is it? Today's Hayom Yom. Oh. Hayom Yom. Today is the 7th day of Kislev. Seventh day of Kislev. There are 3 types of chachmos, three types of, what do you call it, wisdom. Three types of, what do you want to say, philosophies, if you want to call it, philosophies. One of them is bitl chomer. This is by means of showing how low and disgusting and meaningless and deceiving the physical world is. That's what's called musar. 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 This was mostly by the Litvische Jews. After Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yisrael Salant, he was a tremendous genius and holy person, as he introduced what's called the Musar movement, that people should work on themselves. What did it consist of? Seeing how bad and deceiving the world is, how negative the world is, and not to get caught up in the world, turning from bad. Then there's what's called Chachmat Mailat Atzura Varuchni B'midat U'Muskalat. Then there's what's called understanding the that values and that principles are higher than physical items. To live a life of principles is better than to live a life of just physical pleasures. In other words, the first type is to recognize how bad the world is. Second is to recognize how good values are. Honesty, truth, integrity, ingenuity, these good things, right? Conscience. That's what's called philosophy. Chachmat HaChakira. Then there's what, like we were talking about here, Hagbarat Atzura al Chomer. Harob Mailet Achomer Mizuchach, that we can purify and make holy the physical and also the values. This is uniting the physical and the spiritual together, so that there's no beginning and no end. In other words, the first way is to see how bad the physical is. The second way is to see how good the spiritual is. The third way is to unite them both, to show how the spiritual and the physical can really be used for one common purpose, because the beginning can be found in the end, and the end can be found in the beginning. In other words, by means of a simple physical deed, you can reach the highest spiritual levels. But this has to be done with the spiritual levels in mind. So this is not talking about how bad the physical is, and it's not talking about how good the spiritual is. It's talking about how amazing the unification of both of them together. The intention is that to reveal the holiness, the creator and the creation, like we learned in the Sicha, that both of them together. This is Chassidut. This is Chassidut. In general, the first way is what's called Musa. The second way is what's called philosophy, or even Kabbalah, to show how important the high worlds are. And Chassidut is to unify them both, to show that the highest worlds can be found in the physical world by using the physical world properly. So we have Musar, Kabbalah, and philosophy, Kabbalah, and Chassidut. The idea of Chassidut is to reveal the highest principles in this physical world, and even more, to show the physical world is rooted even higher than the spiritual. Have a good day, everybody. 3:00, we're meeting again and learning Chumash. Today we'll learn about the tribes that were born, the sons of Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah. Have a good day, everyone.